Have you ever had one of those breakout rides where everything you've been working on has finally come together? I thought I was too old to have those anymore. I had one this last Saturday. Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. The first indication that this was going to be a breakout ride was on this section, Bubblegum. This started about 10.5 miles into the ride. This is a 1.6 mile section that averages 2.7%. I had no idea this was going to be a breakout ride. I figured this was going to be like my other group rides, where I do maybe some intervals in the middle of it, and then they pull me back in toward the end. Typically, I would test myself against the others on the set of undulating climbs that we're going to be hitting later on. I would then do a set of intervals on this major climb that would follow the water stop. But I was feeling good now, so I wanted to test myself, see what I had. In the upper left-hand corner are the real-time stats for this ride. My 20-minute FTP is 278 watts. The way I've been measuring it since the COVID lockdown is through Zwift racing. I would do these Zwift crits, and they usually last a little more than 20 minutes. I would derive my best 20-minute section within that crit as my FTP. Some of you may be thinking that my FTP is higher, because when you're doing a race like a Zwift crit, that you have your hard sections, and then have your times that you're kind of backing off when you're on people's wheels. That sounds reasonable, but in my case, it's a stretch for me to be in the category B, which is the category that I'm doing with the Zwift races. It seems in those that I'm either on the edge or just going hard all the time. Back to the screen, we have a split on the field. Teammate Dave has taken the front, followed by teammate Chris. I had pulled off because I was concerned I was trying to slow these guys down. I figured I'd better do that or else I'm going to get real tired and they're going to jump me and I'm going to be solo off the back again. Dave was riding strong and Chris was having trouble hanging onto his wheel, and I figured that Dave's just going to get away from us, so I put a surge in to get back on his wheel. I gotta say, I was surprised that I was able to surge up with as little effort as I did and then be able to hang on his wheel. As you can see by my power numbers in the upper left hand corner, Dave was driving us all the way to the top. This section lasted a little over 5.5 minutes and averaged 300 watts. Not bad for this 66-year-old that's subject to AFib. I was with 5 of my teammates, and 3 of my teammates this year can outride me in pretty much all aspects of cycling, and 2 of my teammates can outride me in some of the aspects of cycling. I therefore use these guys as a measuring stick to see how I'm improving and if I'm improving. Even though we had some amped riding after Bubblegum, this first climb of the undulating section is what I consider my next indicator test. Dave is at the front pulling. He's pulling so hard that he's causing me to be in threshold riding wheels. Terry's reaching his edge, so he's got to back off so he doesn't blow. A bit later, when I'm getting close to VO2 max, Dave pulls off and Eric takes over. Terry, who previously pulled off, is hanging in there, but he's about a bike length behind Chris, who's behind me. Robert, our sprinter and non-climber, has lost contact a while ago. A little over 2 minutes later, Terry's still holding parity with us, although a few bike lengths off the back. I am still at threshold on Eric's wheel. I soon take over with a plan to consistently pull so hard that I don't die, but that no one else jumps me. Nearing the top of the second test section, Chris has succumbed to the pace and has fallen off. Terry, who was off the back for a bit, has recovered and gotten back on, is now connected with us. I almost met my criteria, but got jumped by Eric at the end here. This 1.3 mile, 5.6% section was done in a little over 7 minutes, and it felt longer. My average power for this was 305 watts. When I wasn't in one of these test sections, I was riding these guys' wheels, recovering as much as I could under stress because these guys were still pushing it. There was no fluff on this ride. Eric has already been pulling at the front for a while as we start our next test section climb. We are down to 4 of us. We will be regrouping at the water stop at the top of the undulating section. After a bit, I take over and then I finish it to the top. This was a shorter effort we did in a little over a minute, where I averaged 312 watts. We are now starting the last climb of this undulating section. I want to be at the front hammering, but I'm at the back. I decided I was going to be a little bit patient and see how this plays out. With Dave at the front, Eric attacks.
Terry is getting gapped as he's starting to weaken. I have to fill that gap now. Dave is starting to lose contact with Eric's wheel, so I go in front of him. I almost go around Eric, but I decide not to. This climb steepens at the end, and it's just not made for my body, so I gotta see how I feel. Well, apparently I'm feeling pretty good relative to what I'm seeing that what Eric is doing, so I'm going to the front, and now I'm just pushing it. What I have to do at this point, because of how this thing steepens, is keep my pace as strong as I can, just like before. Strong enough where they don't jump me, but not so strong where I blow up before I get to the top. As we round this small curve, this is where it starts to steepen. I am using a 5034 compact crank. I am using a 1129 cox head in the back. I don't know what gear I'm in, but I'm guessing right now I am in my 3423. Maybe my 3426. If I'm not in my 26, I soon will be. Seeing I have a cadence of 68 to 70, I'm probably in my 23 right now. And I'm guessing since I jumped up into the mid 70s, I just shifted to my 26. Terry, who was having trouble staying connected earlier, has gone to the front with panache and has taken Eric with him. Dave is still on my wheel. So now I'm going to try and do what I can just to hang on with these guys. And right now it is getting tough for me. I'm having to concentrate to stay on their wheel. In fact, I'm almost getting to that decision point where you decide if you want to die off or if you want to keep going. And fortunately, since I encountered this decision point many times before, I know what it takes to keep going. That last climb was the steepest average yet at 6.6. Fortunately, it's only 0.4 miles long. It took us about 2.5 minutes, and 336 watts is what I averaged. A small descent followed that climb, and then a little bump that we're on now, and this is where I first start to fail. The others attack, and I just don't have the legs to go with them. I roll in a mile or so to the water stop, and fortunately get a chance to rest as I'm waiting for the other two to join us. Even as well as I have been doing, I have not been able to get away from these guys. And now we're about to do the 1.75 mile Jose Basin climb. With these various test sections I've already done, it's pretty well established that I'm doing a lot better than what I was before. There's no way I could have done this ride. I couldn't do as well as I did on this ride if I did this ride last week. After we left the water stop, Terry and Chris took off on a separate route so they can do some intervals. So now it's just the four of us. At 1.7 miles and 7.1% average grade, this is the longest and steepest of the test sections that I've had so far. My plan is with the other sections was to go so hard that they don't jump me, yet I don't redline and die off before the top. About at minute 45 into this climb, Eric was having his own thoughts on who should be pushing the pace on this climb. So he is starting to challenge me and come up. Terry has since fallen off the pace, probably because he's thinking we're a bunch of idiots. Once we're done with this section, we still have a little over 2,000 feet to climb. In the meantime, both Eric and I are close to the edge. Fortunately for me, Eric is closer to his edge than I am to mine. Eric settles back onto my wheel, and all this time, Dave has been keeping pace. About a minute later, I put in not a surge, but I upped the ante, so to speak, such that now each of us are split apart from each other by about a couple bike lengths. At this point, this is a pace I can do, but not for the entire climb. 45 seconds later, my wattage is still up there, so I really didn't let up. These guys clawed their way back up. Now Dave's still off now, this time about 3 bike lengths. And I pulled over to the left a little bit because I was thinking, man, I think Eric's going to come through. So fortunately for me, he hadn't, and then he's back on my wheel to recover a little bit from the effort of getting back up to me. A minute 20 later, I had these guys on the ropes, and yet they clawed back up to me. I've been using a lot of bananas, and there's still a ways to go on this section. And on top of that, it is now Grupo Compacto. A little over a minute later, Eric shows that he's not content just to roll in on my wheel. He takes the front, and I am starting to feel content that I'm not redlining yet. My heart rate's at about 133, so it's quite manageable. That being stated, there's no way I'm going to attack him right now and take the front because I can't. I'm biding my time because I don't know if he's going to hit the gas and leave me in the dust. I have noticed in the past when he does stuff like this that there's a slight delay or slight drop in his power. If that happens again, and it appears to, and as long as I keep my power constant, then I can take the front again. 30 seconds later, he lays down the watts, and then he gets a gap on me. I'm trying everything I can to stay with him, but he's going with such authority that I just got to stick to my pace or else I'm going to blow up. Dave's right behind me. At any moment, I'm thinking he can go, jump up to him, and they're going to work together and then get to the top. I wouldn't say I'm in big trouble right now, but I'm heading toward the middle lines to have a slightly less gradient, so I can maybe give myself a little rest and maybe get up to him. And when I say rest, I'm not really rest. That's more of not putting as much power out. 20 seconds later, I crawl back up to him. Dave's about a bike length off my wheel. I'm going up along the side, and I see that he has slowed down just a bit, so I just keep my pace and keep going. Eric, in the meantime, is doing what he can to stay in my wheel and stay connected. Dave is looking over his edge as he's now standing to try and make up some distance, or at least not lose distance. I got a bit of a gap. I would love to put this to bed and pull away right now, but Eric has other plans. After he gets some of his legs back from his most recent attack, he's at it again. It gets up to me, goes to the front, and proceeds to stamp out an authoritative pace. All I can do is just hang on his wheel right now and just bide my time. And when I say bide my time, it's not like I have a lot of energy here. I am not sure if I can beat this guy to the top. I will see if I can recover a little bit being on his wheel, and then look for opportunities, more specifically if he starts to slow down from his pace. Being so close to the top, Dave is figuring that he's not going to be able to connect with us before we get there unless we totally falter. So he's just keeping up the best pace that he can. I take the front again, not because Eric slowed down. I was able to recover enough and get a little extra power, so now you see that I'm in the 300s. Dave is not willing to give up, so he's right on my wheel. While we're waiting for this mano a mano drag race to finish out, we did this climb in 11:27, and I averaged 278 watts. That's my threshold, my 20 minutes FTP. After we finished this section, and then we continued on after our regroup, we seemed to agree not to hammer each other and keep it more muted. At that point, I just didn't have a lot of bananas left in me. So now we're coming into the finish. Eric is right behind me. I'm trying to go as hard as I can. Even though Eric has done this climb before, he's new to the area, so I think he's only done it once, so he doesn't know the exact finish. But I am happy to get to the top with my nose in the front. Yeah, last week I wouldn't have been able to do what we did today already. Could not have. It just came together today. You guys are going to turn around. I'm having some ankle problems. You go. Raise your hand if you heard me. Okay, thanks. Oh man, too bad I can't go with them, but what's hurting is right back here. That's actually my, I said ankle, but tendon, Achilles tendon, or some muscles underneath it. And I've had that going on for a while now, and that happens when I'm constantly pounding it. And this ride I was constantly pounding it, and it was a good ride. Hey, yeah. Oh man, if I wasn't talking to you, I'd be going with him.